Imagine a world where the lines between personal and collective experiences blur, where the prayers of an individual can echo the cries of an entire nation. This is the world of the Psalms, a collection of ancient Hebrew poems that have puzzled scholars and inspired believers for millennia. In the 21st century, we often see the Psalms as a personal devotional tool, a source of solace and strength. But delve deeper, and you'll find a complex tapestry of individual and communal voices, woven together in a way that challenges our modern understanding of identity and community. The Psalms are often categorized into different types, with laments being one of the most prominent. A lament is a prayer of distress, a cry for help in times of trouble. These psalms can be further divided into individual laments and communal laments. Individual laments, like Psalm 13, express the personal struggles and suffering of a single person. Communal laments, such as Psalm 79, voice the collective pain of a group, often the nation of Israel. However, the distinction between these two types is not always clear-cut. Take Psalm 102, for example. The first part of the psalm appears to be a personal lament, with the speaker describing their own suffering and pleading for God's help. But as the psalm progresses, it shifts to a communal focus, addressing the destruction of Jerusalem and the plight of the nation. This fluidity between individual and communal concerns is a common feature in many psalms. Psalm 102 is a prime example of this complexity. It begins with a vivid description of an individual's suffering, with the speaker feeling weak and abandoned. However, in verses 13 to 14, the focus shifts to the city of Zion, which is in ruins. The speaker then identifies the city's destruction with their own personal calamity, blurring the lines between individual and communal suffering. This theme of identification continues throughout the psalm, with the speaker moving back and forth between personal and collective concerns. One possible explanation for this structure is that the psalm was written to reflect the deep interconnectedness between the individual and the community in ancient Israel. The speaker's personal struggles are seen as a microcosm of the nation's larger problems, and vice versa. This interplay suggests that in the ancient world, the boundaries between I and we were more fluid than they are in modern times. The way the Psalms were used in ancient Israel adds another layer of complexity to their interpretation. While there is limited evidence in the Hebrew Bible about the actual use of psalmody, the books of Chronicles suggest that psalms were sung in the temple during worship. However, it's important to note that this evidence primarily pertains to the Second Temple period, which dates from the 6th century BC onward. In the temple, the laments were likely performed by individuals, often professional lamenters, rather than being sung communally. These professional singers might have represented the suffering of the community, even if the psalm itself was originally an individual lament. This practice of using a single voice to represent a collective experience further blurs the lines between individual and communal laments. The transformation of psalms from individual to communal and back again is not unique to Psalm 102. Other psalms, such as Psalm 130, also exhibit this pattern. Psalm 130 begins as a personal cry for forgiveness, but ends with a communal call to hope in the Lord. This suggests that the Psalms were not static texts, but were adapted and reinterpreted over time to meet the needs of different contexts and audiences. The question of whether the Psalms were originally written for use in worship is a matter of ongoing debate. Some scholars argue that the Psalms were primarily literary works, designed for private consumption, and only later adapted for use in public worship. Others believe that they were always intended for communal use, whether in the temple or in local places of worship. Regardless of their original purpose, the Psalms have been used in worship for centuries. In the Christian tradition, many Psalms are sung as hymns or recited during liturgical services. In Jewish tradition, Psalms are a central part of daily prayer and are often recited in synagogues. The adaptability of the Psalms to different contexts and uses underscores their enduring relevance and versatility. In addition to laments, the Psalter includes many psalms of praise and thanksgiving. These psalms express joy and gratitude to God for His goodness and faithfulness. Some, like Psalm 100, are clearly intended for communal use, with the speaker calling on all the earth to make a joyful noise to the Lord. Other psalms, such as Psalm 34, are more personal, with the speaker expressing their individual thanksgiving for God's deliverance. The psalms of praise and thanksgiving, like the laments, can be used by both individuals and communities. An individual might use a communal psalm of praise in private prayer, identifying with the collective gratitude of the nation. Conversely, a community might use a personal psalm of thanksgiving in a public setting, seeing the speaker as a representative of the group's shared experiences. Not all psalms are directed to God in the form of laments or praises. Some, like Psalm 37, are wisdom psalms that offer moral and spiritual guidance. These psalms are more instructional in nature, providing advice on how to live a righteous life. The speaker in these psalms is often portrayed as a wise teacher, offering insights and exhortations to the reader. The wisdom psalms are less likely to be used in liturgical settings, as they do not fit the typical pattern of worship. However, they have been and continue to be used in both Jewish and Christian traditions for personal reflection and study. The wisdom found in these psalms offers a different kind of spiritual nourishment, focusing on ethical living and the importance of trusting in God. One of the most unique and challenging types of psalms is the acrostic psalm, such as Psalm 119. An acrostic is a poem in which the first letter of each line or stanza follows a specific pattern, often the letters of the alphabet. Psalm 119 is the most famous acrostic psalm, with each of its 22 sections corresponding to a letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Psalm 119 is a meditation on the beauty and importance of God's law. Every verse contains a synonym for Torah, such as statutes, judgments, and commandments. While it is a complex and lengthy psalm, it has been a source of inspiration and devotion for centuries. In Christian tradition, It is often recited during the little hours, or services of prayer between morning and evening prayer. The study of the Psalms has a rich history of interpretation and scholarship. In the 20th century, the work of Hermann Gunkel and his student Sigmund Moenkel revolutionized the way scholars approached the Psalms. Gunkel argued that the Psalms were religious lyrics modeled on earlier public texts, while Moenkel suggested that the Psalms we have were themselves public texts. These scholars provided a framework for understanding the Psalms in their historical and liturgical contexts. However, recent scholarship has begun to move beyond these early interpretations, asking new questions about the Psalter and its place in ancient Israelite society. The Psalms are a rich and multifaceted collection of ancient poems that continue to speak to us today. They challenge our modern notions of individuality and community, inviting us to see the interconnectedness of personal and collective experiences. Whether used in private devotion or public worship, the Psalms offer a timeless source of comfort, guidance, and inspiration. In a world where the boundaries between I and we are often rigid, the Psalms remind us that our individual struggles and triumphs are part of a larger, shared human experience.